Okay, here's one on the physical descriptions of Jesus. Now it tells you there's no description of Jesus in the New Testament or any contemporary source. Yet in hundreds of icons, paintings, and even coins, there's a common quality that enables us to identify Jesus in works of art. Starting in the 6th century, artistic depictions of Jesus seem inspired or even copied from a single source. And you can imagine now that people would look for inspiration on something like that and see a famous picture of Jesus and get a picture in their mind. Now, part of the problem is there are people that say that, well, I had some Negro-centric that think that blacks were in the Bible and that Jesus was a Negro somehow. Yeah, I know. But he says that Jesus was just copied off Caesar Borgia. And so I've done a video just now about that and the truth of that fact that, well, we've got all these pictures of Jesus that still looks the same before then. And there are some descriptions, but it's from other places, and we're about to look at a couple of those. So one famous depiction of him that people know, of course, and the Shroud of Turin and all these type of things, and I've done a video about that and its reality too. But and many other people have, but also people have a common depiction of Jesus, and nowadays it seems strange, and people try to use this to try to say somehow that Caucasians aren't part of the Bible when it is only a Caucasian religion. So that seems so odd to hear from some third world country where they try to make up stuff or discredit you out of the Bible. And oh, some of them even try to credit themselves in, like Negroids do now. You know, West African primitives didn't know the Bible and biblical people existed in Egypt or anything, and they didn't know any of them existed until the Jewish slave masters showed up much, much later. But that's neither here nor there. They wanted better religion than their voodoo thing, and they want a better history than pre-Stone Age level illiterate primitives who were relying on the rest of the world. And so they want to claim that, but they don't want to quit relying on the rest of the world and being recently domesticated primitives and have the problems and crime that go along with it. But they would like that Caucasian history if they could have it, and definitely dismiss their own. And so you can tell the reason I'm doing this is because I had an idiot, again, get on my videos and try to tell me that Jesus was a Negro. They try to do this by saying things like, well, at Armageddon, he looks like this. Well, that's supposed to be a mystical, godlike depiction and not like Jesus standing in front of you. But okay, let's go with it. Well, he has woolly hair, and Negroes have woolly hair. No, Negroes don't have woolly hair. Woolly hair laying off a lamb is kind of curly, but it is sure not Bantu knots at all. But the correct statement exactly there is his head and his hair are white as wool. So an old white man with long hair, or that look like a judge with one of those wigs on, is going to fit that depiction more than any Negro possibly could, for his head is white, and Negroes don't have a white head. So then they go on as if they could make somehow it come out to be a Negro, and they say, well, his feet are black. Where does it say his feet are black? Well, it said that those feet were like brass in a furnace. And so that's all covered with soot and black. And it was like, oh, okay, so if Jesus walked through a mud puddle, now he's a Negro? And they get real mad about that. But then, lo and behold, brass in a furnace is white hot. And not just covered in soot. I mean, you could sit and get one thing soot covered, but if you're putting it in a furnace, and these people in the times of everything, of course, that's white hot. And so that becomes a negligible thing too. Now we're going to look at descriptions given by the Romans that were in that area, recorded shortly after that point and during that point, and see what they say of his appearance. Let's see if we can get any idea of Negroid anywhere. Well, of course we can't. There aren't any Negroids even in the area. They're all sub-Saharan African primitives now, but their jealousy nowadays and inferiority complex makes them try to claim things like this in Egypt. Right, they didn't know it existed. But let's go on. The following was taken from a manuscript in the possession of Lord Kelly in his library and was copied from an original letter of Publius Lentulus at Rome, it being the usual custom of Roman governors to advise the Senate and people of such material things as happened in their provinces in the days of Tiberius Caesar. Publius Lentulus, president of Judea, wrote the following epistle to the Senate concerning the Nazarene called Jesus. I don't know if a lot of people know or not, but this idea of this Israel place, it was owned by Rome at this time, and then they have a Jewish revolt. And I've all but proven that when Jesus speaks at the Mount of Olives in 33 AD, just before Passover, and says in 40 years and in one generation, these things, this generation shall not pass, blah, 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 and a generation is 40 years in the Bible. They wander in the desert for 40 years, that makes 73 AD, and the fall of Jerusalem actually pinpoint exactly Jesus pointing it out. It's amazing. But what it also points out is, well, hold on, that's exactly 40 years, but when did it start? Well, it started in 66 AD. Okay, what's the deal with that? Well, it started in the 6th month on the 6th day. And for those that have wisdom, count the number, for it is a human number. And people have looked over this for a long, long time. But if we take 66 AD and have 7 years of trials and tribulations, that encompasses till 73 AD again. And we're left at the end. And the fall of Masada, which is called Armageddon. Yeah. So many people have made correlations to it, and I'm going to do a separate video again for a third time on this correlation and what happened and how the Bible and Jesus himself points out that the second coming of man is coming at that 73 AD, and he's going to come in on a horse. And the man that comes in on a horse, a white horse, is Titus. He has a biblical passage written about him, and then of course it becomes the Roman Catholic Church. And even Josephus himself says that all the prophecies were leading to this man and this point. And that's because the Greeks before them had been the ones over it and everything too. But I'll have to get into that at a separate time. I just want to give a little flavor there and some type of knowledge that I know a lot about what's going on with this, but also I didn't study it before I studied all the others around it. And I found out about the Caucasians and the Heralds and did a lot in Sumeria and things, and found out, well, Abraham's from Ur, and it starts in Sumeria between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. And I found that story. I found it in the Epic of Gilgamesh, and then the flood story of Utnapishtim and the Atrahasis, and have slowly over time put it all together and figured out that this is a great Caucasian story that is not spread and seems to point on one little people, but it points at all. And like the scapegoat, it put the problems of making its way there on these people that now we try to look at as being somebody totally different, and that almost has no reality to it. But that'll be in a separate video, and it'll probably have to be a series so I can go into each thing in enough detail where you can get enough assurance that it does appear the way that it says. And I probably won't be able to show you everything that I've ever learned on it in any way, shape, or form, but after seeing enough of it, you might in your mind say, and he's seen a lot more, so yeah, I could probably see that. But let's see what they saw and what they reported about the look of Jesus. There appeared in these days a man of the Jewish nation of great virtue, named Yeshua, that's Jesus, who is yet living among us, and of the Gentiles, is accepted for a prophet of truth. But his own disciples call him the Son of God. He raised the dead, and cureth all manner of diseases. A man of stature somewhat tall and comely, with a very reverent countenance, such as beholders may both love and fear. His hair of the color of chestnut, so it's kind of a browny golden color, full ripe, plain to his ears, hence downwards it more orient and curling and wavering about his shoulders. So Jesus has long, blondish chestnut hair that's pretty straight down his head till about the ears, and then it starts to become more curly all through his shoulders, and he's a long-haired, hippie-looking guy. But that's because Nazarites keep their hair sacred, and they would chop it off for sacrifices and things, and kids grew up, and the idea of the hairlock of the Egyptians and everything goes along with this too, and a coming of age, and bar mitzvah and things actually comes along with this and is a derivative way off of it. But these kids that grow up their hair, and then when they become married and everything, they'll chop their hair off, or whenever they go celibate, they grow their hair out, and whenever they're going to no longer be celibate, they chop their hair off and give it a penance to the gods and stuff. This is seen in the strange story of Delilah and Samson, and how he has this long hair. And Samson, of course, is Sham's son, and he's the son of God. The son, Shams, or Shamash, is the sun god in the Sumerians and these people over here. It's the word they use in the Bible for it. And Shams is also another simple name for it. Just doesn't have the ash on the end of it. But Sham's son. And he's nothing more than a retelling of like a Hercules tale, and killing the lion and do everything else around in a story. But the biblical stories are meant to be more human and as opposed to mythological, like the stories that they originally derived from. So long hair is something that the Nazarites do. And the Bible describes the Nazarites. It says, her Nazarites are pure as snow, as pale as milk, with a blushing of rubies. So this is the Adamic look, and Adamic means pale but blushing skin. This is the ability to have that blushing skin, and there's only one race of people that really have that. But let's go into this more with this long hippie hair that's chestnut colored. In the midst of his head is a seam or partition of his hair. So he parts it in the middle, right? After the manner of the Nazarenes, his forehead plain and very delicate, his face without spot or wrinkle, beautiful with a lovely red, his nose and mouth so formed as nothing can be reprehended. So in other words, it's not like one of his nostrils is too big or anything else, and he doesn't look like he has too big a lips or a weird mouth in any way or something odd about it. His beard thickish in color like his hair, so a blondish chestnut color. Not very long, his beard, but forked. And that's one thing that they don't show in a lot of the pictures, is that it would have been forked, and that almost looks like a devilish look or whatever, if you will. But they used to do this in separate twids. You'll see a lot of heavy metal guitarists and stuff, they'll have a chin thing going down to one, or they might do it in two or whatever, and it's really done in two. It's a splitting or a parting. And there's a lot of old pictures that show a lot of people with it that way, so they're saying his is that way, right? His look innocent and mature, his eyes gray, some interpretations say blue-gray, clear and quick, in reproving hypocrisy. He is terrible in admonishing, courteous and fair spoken, pleasant in conversation, mixed with gravity. So in other words, his speech carries weight. whenever he speaks, each word is selectively chosen to carry weight, right? It cannot be remembered that any have seen him laugh, but many have seen him weep. In proportion of body most excellent, his hands and arms delicate to behold, in speaking very temperate, modest and wise, a man for his singular beauty surpassing the children of men. And you can tell that in this idea, he is lending the first stories of Jesus being more than a man, being incredible. At this point, he's thought of as being just a prophet. And in the original idea, he was supposed to be just a prophet that's going to foresee the coming of the Son of Man. And then when we figure that out, that Son of Man that he pinpoints to 40 years later, no stone left standing on the temple. Everything that he says happens during the Jewish revolt. Yeah, they actually started it. Believe it or not, they started World War II with Germany too, in a different way, where they tried to do a revolt thing there. But that's neither here nor there. I'm not going to talk about that. That's actually two totally different people. Believe it or not. So, apparently he has a chestnut golden hair, and he has blue-gray eyes, and he's pale, and paler than the other people around, which a lot of them are workers and probably just have tans. And so, being a priest, he stays indoors and things like that and stuff, and he's able to keep pale. You can see that in Egyptian art, where the women and the priests are pale, and all the men are shown red ochre color. But that same red ochre color is in Greeks and Mitanni and Minoans and all that place around there, and pale women and red ochre men. And it goes all the way back, red ochre burials that go all the way back past Cro-Magnon times and everything. It's a symbology, something that Caucasians have used for art, like all the cave art that you see for it's not, I can't say recorded time, I can say what we know of as humanity. So it's not something that's just lightly, or that they did once for a short period of time, or a symbology they might have had for a weekend. So let's look at another story. This is from Pontius Pilate himself to Tiberius Caesar. Now, this is a reprinting of a letter from Pontius Pilate to Tiberius Caesar describing the physical appearance of Jesus. And current copies are in the Congressional Library in Washington, D.C. It holds weight. To Tiberius Caesar, a young man appeared in Galilee, preaching with humble unction a new law in the name of God that had sent him. At first I was apprehensive that his design was to stir up the people against the Romans, but my fears were soon dispelled. Now at this time, of course, there was Jewish revolts and things going on, and what they were looking for, if you'll look at the Old Testament, was a Messiah who was supposed to be not called Jesus. He was supposed to be called Emmanuel, which this hooks up to El, and the god of the Canaanites and everything. But anyhow, he was supposed to have been a warrior god that was going to come and take them and let them war against Rome, and now they get their land back. Didn't go down like that, and Josephus says, no, it's just the opposite. It was supposed to have always gone this way, and Jesus even told you it's Tiberius Caesar right here. It's Titus Flavius and the Flavians, and that's the next heritage. And secret right here. You want to talk about the Jesus conspiracy and the Holy Grail and everything, and all those books that were made by Brown recently, and everything, and that he had children, and that it passes on, and there's a sacred bloodline, and it's Titus's freaking bloodline, and the Flavians and everything. It goes right with it, and people keep trying to pull all kinds of different things. I went deep into their ideal of where all this comes from, and then ended up finding the reality of where it comes. I'll do another video on it here soon, or you can look back in my videos, and I've got one about 3.5 years old that was just after Tom Hanks had done the movie about it and everything, and I picked it apart. So anyhow, Jesus of Nazareth spoke rather as a friend of the Romans than of the Jews. Letting you know. And of course, we all know that he was very Roman friendly and give unto Caesar what is Caesar's and stuff, and sure doesn't sound like the man that they said was coming. But if you'll look at the biblical text, they make sure that he does exactly all the things and fits all the different prophets from before, as Isaiah and David and everything, and all these things, and has to pull them off, and he does them in some type of sequence. I keep trying to get into that. I'll do a separate video on it. So he came off the bat not really liking the Jews and being a little pro-Roman, it seemed, huh? One day I observed in the midst of a group a people of a young man who was leaning against a tree, calmly addressing the multitude. I was told it was Jesus. This I could easily have suspected, so great was the difference between him and those that were listening to him. His golden-colored hair and beard gave to his appearance a celestial aspect. He appeared to be about 30 years of age. Never have I seen a sweeter or more serene countenance. What a contrast between him and his bearers with their blackened beards and tawny complexions. And so I've actually had blacks try to claim that too. They want to claim anything tawny, swarthy, or perhaps darker than a sheet of paper. I'm Irish and I am the color of cardboard, and that's considered tawny, for we know that everybody used to do a real pale thing. In fact, Elizabethan even, it took off to the point they were even powdering themselves to stay as pale as possible, and it's a Caucasian edict that we don't have anymore. That when I was a kid, we were all geared towards sun tanning and Beach Boys and hippies and stuff, and we were putting suntan oil on, and then they said, y'all are overdoing that real bad, it's causing a problem, back off. But they said it too much, and now people try to put on sunblock and things like that, but it's real valuable for you to get some sun. And nowadays, instead of saying that you're a serf or a worker because you have a tan, it actually says you're able to even do good enough to go on vacation and get a tan, whereas other people are caught in the office. So things change over time, but none of it has to do with Negroids, but they desperately want it to. And I'm sorry that it's not, but history isn't going to change for people that were found much later, and primitives that it doesn't have anything to do with and is never mentioned. So he's got golden hair. He appeared to be about 30 years of age. Never have I seen a more sweeter countenance, right? Unwilling to interrupt him by my presence, I continued to walk, but signified my secretary to join the group and listen. So as he went by, he didn't interrupt or anything, but he goes, go listen to what he says and report back to me. And he continued on and waited for him to come back later. I continued my walk, but signified to my secretary to join that group. Later, my secretary reported that he had never seen in the works of all philosophers anything that compared to the teachings of Jesus. He told me that Jesus was neither seditious nor rebellious, so we extended to him our protection. He was at liberty to act, speak, and assemble and address people. This unlimited freedom provoked the Jews, not only the poor, but the rich and powerful. And so what he's saying, when Jesus came here and he was trying to say, nice things and don't turn rebellious, turn the other cheek, this isn't the way to do anything, that all you're doing is causing your own problem and dissension while always being, everybody's up under somebody and we're up under them. Before then, we were up under Acadians, we were up under Egypt and everything. This area really never has been ours. You can say after Cyrus the Great and everything, and there's that moment that's there. And that was supposed to be their Jesus and coming moment, but it didn't happen for them then either. The Bible's kind of a thing what not to do, but finally in the end finding God. But of course we look back at it because we already know and we found God, and we have these stories that go along with it. Whether I can debunk it and turn it and show you that it works up with pagan people and everything, and it all ends up being the same thing, and those are all discounted to try to point out this one because the other ones aren't monotheistic. And instead of wanting people to pray to a lot of different things, they just want to put a pinpoint on it. Right. But in the moment that this pinpoint is made, it pinpoints a different people that become the Roman Catholic Church. Doesn't it? Yep. So later I wrote to Jesus requesting an interview with him at the Praetorium, and he came. Jesus is a literate man. Had someone send him a thing, stuff. So there's things going on here. He came. When the Nazarene made his appearance, I was having my morning walk, and as I faced him, my feet seemed fastened with an iron hand to the marble pavement, and I trembled in every limb as a guilty culprit, though he was calm. For some time I stood admiring this extraordinary man. There was nothing in him that was repelling, nor his character. I felt awed in his presence. So this is like something like Elvis or whatever. You walked in and he's like, this guy has, oh, he's got it. Snap. And then what makes it more powerful is, and then he spoke. And the words are powerful in the Bible. For it is words God used to spoke the universe into existence. And if you know the names, which is just a word of God's and things, then you have some type of power to use with them or over them, if you will, and things. Words can be quite strong. For the only thing that we have that makes us much more than animals is the ability to speak words that have incredible meanings to them, that all can understand without a picture or anything, and convey over long spaces and long periods of time the same concept as if you were standing right in front of them. Isn't that amazing? I told him that there was a magnetic simplicity about him and his personality that elevated him far above the philosophers and teachers of his day. So he's like, wow, hey, you're a great man, you're doing great things, blah, blah, blah. But this is the way they talked back then, If they would have done this in Elizabethan England, it would have been, I said, thou art fair with thine words. And, okay, so we can go from there. Now, noble sovereign, these are the facts concerning Jesus of Nazareth, and I've taken the time to write you in detail concerning these matters. I say that such a man, who can convert water into wine, change death into life, disease into health, calm the stormy seas, is not guilty of any criminal offense, as others have said. We must agree. Truly, this is the Son of God, your most obedient servant, Pontius Pilate. And we know Pontius' connection to this. What people don't realize is that Jesus really at this point is going to become the scapegoat. If you look in ancient Jewish lore of the First Testament, the Old Testament, there are times when they sacrifice two creatures, and one is the scapegoat, and the other is given to Azazel. This is a creature in the wilderness, and this is yin and yang of God and the devil, by the way. But regardless of that, this is a scapegoat, and in this fact, he puts the sins of all humanity on this creature, and then they kill it as a sacrifice, and then that shit's dead. And then they burn it to crisp and don't eat it. That's what it said. That's what we're led to believe in stuff and everything. Well, what's that got to do with anything? Well, didn't get burned to a crisp necessarily. Now, there's a different thing, but Christos has to do with fire, and it has to do with anointing and the anointing oil. And the anointing oil has to do with cannabis, actually, believe it or not. It's one of the main ingredients of it, written right in the Bible itself. I've got another video about that coming out. I haven't put it out yet at the point I'm reading right now, but... And so this all goes together kind of in a strange way, but Jesus Christ is supposed to be the scapegoat, for he is the sacrificed lamb that now he's going to do it, but he's not going to do it for just that year and it's New Year's resolution but what's going to happen is he's going to do it for all the sins that ever happened and give you the ability to repent for your sins after. So this supposed sin that was put on man because of something that Adam and Eve did and you didn't have anything to do with, which is a bad thing. You can't progress and say, well, your grandkids are cursed because what you did, like they tried to do with Ham's, fourth son Canaan, and all these ideas and all these concepts, and until the fourth son and so on. There's a lot to each one of those ideals, and I don't want to go into each one now. For I was just going to read this straightforward, and then I couldn't bring myself to do it, and I have to talk about the reason why I do this, and that blacks are trying to claim that they're part of the Bible, and they're not Hamites. Hamites are a division of the Caucasian race, just like it says, and the Egyptians are Caucasians, just like it says, and just like it's showing in genetics and everything. And I've done a lot of videos to show you blue-eyed crystal statues of them, very, very first. Hell, the pre-dynastic starting out one, that mummy that they first found before they're doing mummification, is called Ginger. He's a pale man with blonde hair. The only Negroids that are having to do with anything with Egypt are Nubians. Nubians are considered vile Negro troglodytes, and they're not even allowed into Egypt by decree. A lot of people don't know these things, and they're tried to be persuaded lately in some idea and some big PC culture directive that tries to change a little bit of what you might think about ancient history to make you more accepting of immigrants from third world countries coming invading your country. Hey, why don't you mate with them? Why the hell would we do that? We've spent all of eternity keeping ourselves separate and building ourselves up, and now we can fly and we're spacemen. Why would we want to do that? Well, we're going to help out those other people. We help them out enough, and we taught them how to fly and everything. There's no reason for them to have to come to our country and put their crime and their things upon us. This isn't part of the deal. We, the people of the United States, said that it wasn't supposed to be that way. I don't know where along the line we get this twist to where we're going to take a bunch of non-Caucasian immigrants in. For the original we the people said the people that were going to people the Americas were going to be Caucasian Christians. That's what it says. And this is the founders of our country who have lineage all the way back to these type of things and these type of people and are connected to it. And even perhaps the Egyptians somewhat, for their genetics are showing up in Europe, and Europeans became Americans. So this is a lineage that's been going on a long time, and it doesn't have anything to do with Negroids. It has as much to do with Negroids as it has to do in this religion with Eskimos. It doesn't mention Eskimos in it. It doesn't mention Orientals in it. It doesn't mention Negroids in it. It's all really all about this Caucasian religion and this Caucasian Jesus here, who is shown with gold hair and blue or gray eyes, and so he looks very much like the depiction that had always been given him. Now it's true that a Caucasian god would always look Caucasian, as the Greeks even said that other people would have their own gods and it would look their own way. But one thing's for certain, the Caucasian God of the Bible will never be called a Negroid without it being a blasphemous lie. A covetous, blasphemous lie. And then they follow it up with trying to point out things, and they bear false witness. And it gets worse from there. And then they get mad and go out and kill somebody for a pair of shoes. And man, we're eating up those 10 Commandments, aren't we? But we sure aren't being very biblical, are we? It's terrible in a modern day to think about this, but I want to let you know that Black Church has dismissed the truth of this all, and very few of them now have a depiction of a Caucasian Jesus they're supposed to be praying to, and they try not to desperately refer to Caucasians, but all the stories that they're reading when they do never refer to a Negroid whatsoever. It's all Caucasians. For West African primitives didn't know any of this existed, and now they try so jealously to covet it. This is one of the few depictions of Jesus that have ever been written down. And a lot of people say, oh, they used that along with Josephus and had come up with it. That's fantastic. They came up with Whitey Cracker Jesus. Regardless of anything that you say, he's a Caucasian God. Made up or not, regardless of anything. The God and his son are both Caucasian. His son is depicted just like An is in the Sumerians, with golden hair and blue eyes, because the sun is a golden shape in a blue sky. And it works well with these Caucasians, and it does not work to Negroids. Amazing that all these Caucasians are all sun worshippers. All of the pagan religions have to do with it, and it goes with seasons and things along that line. And when the sun reaches its lowest point in December 21st and stays still for 3 days and then rises again to save all of mankind. It's an ancient story of Mithras and so many other gods. Krishna. It just goes on and on and on of these people that it pulls from. And the original pool that we can find first is Sumerians. And of course, Abraham was from Ur, bringing this concept over. But the people in the area he came to already had a variation of this same tale, and a story of a flood in Deucalion, and he puts him in a boat. All these people have this same flood story. All the Proto-Indo-European Aryan people have this same flood story and a variation on a theme. And it never was intended to pinpoint one people, for the story of that one people was meant to signify the plight of an entire people. But when that one people is wandering around in the desert, there's already Egypt, its greatness, and there's already Canaanite and its big temples and cities and things, and these people are living as nomadic tent dwellers. So it's pulling the last in line as showing you the picture of what happened. The last people to find God. Yeah, it's a strange tale, but one thing again, it's not about anything but Caucasians. And the only descriptions given by Jesus is that he's a Caucasian. And yes, he looks like a hippie with long hair that's golden and got highlights to it, I'm picturing in my mind, kind of straight where it's combed out, but it gets real curly down at the bottom of it, hanging on his shoulders, blue eyes, and fair skin. And people want to say, well, Jesus is Mediterranean, so he must have been middle. No, the people there now are not the people there were before. The Egyptians show blonde, blue-eyed, red-headed people had started them out. This Arabic people that came in, historians can easily show you where that came in late. And they got Negroid admix, and it makes them look the way they do now. How did they look before? Not like that. How did the people in this area look before? Like Europeans. Just as it shows in all their art and things along that nature. Well, you look at Egypt and it's slightly different. And let's look at the bodies. Now we can do genetics, and it says, oh, no. A lot of what made them up in the first place in proto-editions was early European farmers and early European hunter-gatherers and Anatolian farmers and this, that, and the other. How much Negroid? None. Are you begging for admix now as maybe some totally unrelated black people did something somewhere? It's not what happened. I'm sorry I harp on this. They've infiltrated my videos, and I've got this current guy that's trolling me on every single thread, on every video, trying to yap and say all these racist things. It's terrible, but he just mentioned that there's no description of Jesus, and Jesus wasn't a Caucasian. And I said, well, isn't that funny? Because it's the Caucasian Bible. What do you think Caucasian, what do you think their God would look like? He has also denied the fact, it's strange, but during this thread, he goes, so he was proven that Jesus was not black. So then he said Jesus didn't even exist. So then you run him into the ground on that fact. Then he turns around and he tells you that Jesus lived and he was black. He just keeps, every once in a while, he just shorts out, and all that wasn't said before, and I wasn't debunked, and here, say it again. Oh, wait, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go on this other thread where I didn't say all this stuff that's embarrassing and say that again and start the whole thing again. I want to put that out there, even though no matter what, it gets debunked afterwards. I'm going to say it. Here, let me do it again. I might do a video on him. He has hundreds of places he's gotten on my threads and gotten debunked. I don't know. If you want to, we could count it up. It's incredible, but he's about to start deleting them all because just like they always do, after the point they get totally debunked and look like a waste of humanity, a lot of times they just click it off. Some of these guys I just throw off the site. I just say, no, you're not even visible to the site. That's it. Other guys, occasionally on trolls, I'll let them go for a little while because I think that instantly I can make them stop what they're doing, maybe think about it in another way and walk away. At least get some information into them, because other than that, what they do is they yip yip and they run like they did something. And then they strut around probably thinking that they did something and Jesus is a Negro. And it's pathetic. Out of a desperate want to not have a history of being illiterate pre-Stone Age primitives, blacks are trying to claim any civilization they can other than where they came from is actually them, which in reality it would be anybody but them. They were still West African primitives. So let's just say that all of a sudden we find out that India was made by great black people. Well, that's great, but it had nothing to do with West African primitives. They were the most primitive people on the planet and did do nothing. See, so it doesn't get anywhere for the idea of this to happen. But what it does do is cause racism by their own hands and jealousy. And so you want to know what keeps driving this is certain people in media and black jealousy. And Caucasians aren't usually very aware of it. They're just all, well, they're just so primitive. They, aw. Well, whenever you go aw and walk off, they think about killing you and all kinds of stuff because they have a disgusting mentality. You wouldn't believe what's been said on all my videos and stuff, but that's neither here nor there. Again, I apologize. This is just supposed to show you a couple of depictions of Jesus that was written down by people that apparently witnessed him at that time. If this is true or not, regardless of what, it's the only depictions we have of him, and no one's going to write a fake depiction of him nowadays and get anybody to believe in any way, shape, or form he was anything but Caucasian, and there was no Negroids in any of this area at any time whatsoever, although they desperately try it. Yeah, we've got them saying they were Vikings, they were Shakespeare, they were King James of the Bible, they were the Greeks, they were everything. They were anything but West African primitives, and it's pretty transparent whenever you see it in that light. So, again, Jesus, a Caucasian pale man, doesn't look like he was having to do too much work out external. Blonde curly hair, but more like straight and then kind of wavy all at the bottom. Kind of looks like Robert Plant from Led Zepplin, or a lot like my sister's first husband, or that singer from NickleBack. But one thing it sure doesn't look like is a Negro. It's not their religion. I'm sorry it's not, but that doesn't mean that we're going to make it into it either. They were told long ago they can pray to a white God. They've been doing it for a lot of generations, and fastly we find out recently they haven't been praying to a white God at all for the last little bit. In fact, they use the pulpit as a place of racism. Yeah, and to preach incorrect lies about the Bible. And you wonder maybe why black people are having so much trouble in America, and oh, it's white oppression. No, it's God himself telling them that, you're blaspheming like hell, you aren't getting anywhere. The only thing that's going to be done is white people propping you up. You aren't his people. It tells you straight in the Bible that the Jews were chosen as Yahweh's people and that the others had other gods too. So you have your own gods. If you'd like to worship